It was the hottest day of the year so far as the men's qualifications got underway. They competed in all three disciplines: speed, boulder and lead. Speed favourite Bassa Mawem showed his flair by clocking a time of 5:45, which is now an Olympic record. Top climbers such as Adam Ondra and Alex Megos were noticeably slower than the speed specialists, and so they had to play catch-up in the next two events. In the bouldering round, the story of the day was undoubtedly French climber Michael Mawem, who led the field with an incredible three tops. Tomoa Narasaki and Adam Ondra were close behind. With the temperature cooling to 29 degrees Celsius for the lead, a lot of the top lead climbers were in a good position. 17-year-old dark horse Colin Duffy from the USA put in a top performance, nearly topping the route and getting them through to the final on Thursday. There were tense moments throughout, particularly for some of the top names. Jakob Schubert had his work cut out, having underperformed in the bouldering, but he smoothly topped the rankings in the lead. Sadly, Bassa Mawem suffered a horrible bicep tear, which will force him to retire despite making the final. Here are our men's Olympic finalists: Michael Mawem from France, Tomoa Narasaki from Japan, Colin Duffy from the United States of America, Jakob Schubert from Austria, Adam Ondra from the Czech Republic, Alberto Gines Lopez from Spain, Bassa Mawem from France, and Nathaniel Coleman from the United States of America.
Climbing's big debut, everything seemed to go very smoothly. The route setting was amazing, the climbers were awesome, like speed BBs everywhere. Who stood out? I think the Mawem brothers, of course, Mika Mawem, really awesome performance. Pretty sad about Bassa's bicep. It doesn't really look like he's going to be able to climb in 2 days, which should be a real shame, but as Mika said to me, their goal was to make finals together, and they've done that effectively, so they should be really proud. Really young climbers doing well, like Alberto, Colin and Nathaniel, and then mixed in with, legends of the game like Adam Ondra, Jakob Schubert. A few surprises, I think. Adam and Jakob didn't perform as well as they might have done, especially Jakob. I expected Jakob to do a bit better, but he was talking about conditions being poor, and just Ondra talked a bit about not feeling the flow and just over gripping quite a bit on the route, which was really interesting. Also talked about, a few of them mentioned talking about the audience, like no spectators, making it really hard for them to gauge where they had to get to. Probably the best moment from all the competition was when Michael Mawem topped boulder number 3, I think it was, and everyone just broke the COVID rule and cheered because he just deserved it, and people were like, sod the rules, let's just cheer. And just a great atmosphere, even though it was slightly weird. Like, it felt like a big event, but it felt different. And then tomorrow we've got the women's to look forward to, but first I need to write up some reports, have some food because I'm not eating since lunchtime, and get some sleep. So I'll report back tomorrow.
With the men's qualifications over, let's look at who we think are the favourites.
Narasaki's World Cup career got underway in 2012 at the Lead World Cup in Japan, but it wasn't until 2014 that he started competing regularly in bouldering events. The results were unspectacular until the Haiyang World Cup that year, where he made his first semi-final, and then his first final at the same event. After that, he began to consistently make semis, but no more finals until Chongqing in China 2016, where he made the final, won the event and went on to dominate the season. In that year alone, he won the Boulder World Cup overall title, a World Championship gold in boulder, and the Adidas Rockstars Invitational competition. In the years since, Narasaki's added 3 Lead World Cup medals to his tally, and in 2019 another World Cup overall and World Championship double to cement his place as one of the sport's true greats. His natural quietness makes him somewhat of a mysterious character, essentially unknown to even those who see him regularly at competition, and this only adds to his aura. One of Innsbruck's finest climbers, and that's saying something. Jakob Schubert is nothing short of a living legend. A perfect example of you become who you hang out with. Schubert came onto the Innsbruck climbing scene when Anna Sturr and Kilian Fischhuber were all knocking around the legendary Tivoli wall, and with company like that, he was off to a good start. He seemed to pick up everything they could teach him, and he's also figured out for himself how to always be at the best when the stakes are highest. Schubert has been on the podium for the Lead World Cup overall title in no less than 8 seasons, which includes 3 wins. Is joint holder with Ramon Julien Poublanc of Spain, the record for the most World Cup wins ever, and has 7 World Championship medals, including 3 golds, 2 in lead and 1 in combined. His form comes and goes like every athlete, but there is nobody in the climbing world who is better at being ready for the big events. Schubert has only missed out on the podium twice in the 7 Lead World Championships he's contested. No other climber on the planet, with the exception of Alex Honnold perhaps, gets recognised and approached for autographs at airports, town centres and climbing walls like Adam Ondra. Along his journey from 6-year-old rock wonder kid to Olympian, Ondra has set records and forged new ground in almost every aspect of rock and competition climbing. Ondra is the only male athlete to have won IFSC World Championship titles in 2 disciplines, lead and boulder, in the same year, 2014. He is the only male athlete to have won the World Cup Series in both disciplines, lead in 2009, 15 and 19, and the boulder in 2010. He made a rapid second ascent of the Dawn Wall in Yosemite in 2016, established the world's first 9C rock climb in 2017, and achieved the world's first 9A plus flash in 2018. In fact, since he first stepped off the ground with his climbing parents, barely a year has gone by in which Ondra hasn't rewritten the history books. Despite his fame and unusually large fan base for a professional climber, 702,000 followers on Instagram, Ondra remains a grounded, passionate and widely respected ambassador for the sport in its myriad of forms. His engagement in climbing competition has certainly helped garner newfound respect for the discipline from some cynical outdoor traditionalists who have followed his participation with interest. In 2016, however, Ondra wasn't so keen on speed climbing and consequently training for the Olympic combined format. "I think speed climbing is a kind of artificial discipline," he commented at the time. "It doesn't have much in common with the climbing philosophy, in my opinion," he continued, before explaining that he would need to think a lot about committing to the Olympics, a classic example of Ondra's cerebral approach to climbing. Much to the appreciation of the climbing world, Ondra changed his mind and set out on his road to Tokyo, the title of his popular YouTube series documenting his preparation. Even the New York Times followed him across 3 continents to tell the story of his Olympic journey, with perhaps the best opening line ever. The world's best climber is a wiry 27-year-old with a curly mop of hair and a noticeably long neck.
Speed climbing was a controversial addition to the Olympics, with climbers such as Adam Ondra speaking out against its inclusion. Nonetheless, they've all been hard at work training on the speed route to give themselves a good chance of getting a medal. Mike Langley spoke to Team GB member Billy Ridal for some insight on the speed route.
So 15 metres tall is the speed wall, 5 degrees overhanging. We've measured out 50 metres on flat running here to try and put a comparison for you. Women's world record, 6.9 seconds. Men's is 5.2. We're going to sprint it all beans out and see how quick we are. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
I've got you this time, Billy. 3, 2, 1, go. Well, not only was that stupid, it was actually quite interesting. Just over 3 seconds for us to go absolutely full tilt across the floor. Gives you an idea of how quick these guys really are going.
I feel like I was working pretty hard to get that time, so you can only imagine what it's like up there.
Yeah, next time we'll give it 5 degrees incline as well and see how we get on. Okay, so speed climbing. A lot of people want to know how hard is the actual route that these guys are trying.
Yeah, so on paper the route itself isn't actually super hard. It's supposed to be somewhere around 6B, which is a grade which is accessible to most people who've been climbing a little bit. But to climb the sequence that the speed climbers actually do, and to climb it with enough power to get between the correct positions, you're looking at a much, much higher grade, into the high 7s, or people have suggested it even to be as high as AA to climb it in the correct way.
Is that because of the amount of power you need to skip holds and jump between the different positions?
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of the holds the speed climbers don't even use nowadays. They've sort of streamlined the sequence to make it much straighter. And so the moves become absolutely enormous. And it's not even just a big move to get to the hold, you're jumping into the next position as well. So you need to get even more height so that your muscles are activated to continue momentum through to the next holds.
So the next question everyone asks is, can you practice the route? This route has been the same since 2005. It's the same absolutely all around the world. How long does it take to get the sequence totally dialed?
So I think to learn the sequence which is efficient for you shouldn't take that many sessions, 2 or 3 sessions to have an understanding of what movements you're doing, but then to actually dial in every little intricacy so that you're not losing little efficiencies of movement, making sure your feet hit onto the footholds correctly, to put power through, and so to have all of your limbs working in sync together can be very difficult.
So how many sessions did it take to actually get good on the speed wall, getting times where you feel are respectable?
So I think for me it was probably somewhere into around 20 sessions that I was comfortable with the movement. It had sort of gone from being conscious moves to unconscious, and then at that point I can focus purely on just pulling really hard and giving it absolutely everything.
And so after your 20 sessions, are you climbing it much more subconsciously? You're not really looking where the footholds are, where the handholds are, and you're just executing, or how does it work?
No, exactly that. I'll stand at the route just before I get on, and I'll run through the movements just to sort of jog the muscle memory. But then once I get onto the starting holds, all I'm thinking about is taking a deep breath and pulling and pushing as hard as I possibly can. If I'm moving too quickly to put any conscious thought into any of the grabbing of the holds or the movement, and so it just has to come naturally at that point.
We see a lot of people making slips on the speed wall, and that can determine the results of the whole competition. How difficult is it to get a 100% clean run? So, for example, if you had 10 runs here today, how many out of 10 would you think you just bang clean on with a perfect run?
I would say it was unlikely any of those 10 would be a perfect run. For me personally, it feels like for everything to go right is exceedingly unlikely. And so the top athletes, what makes them so good is the consistency that they can produce a really top result at. And often the winning time won't necessarily be the fastest they can possibly go. It's the time that they can consistently repeat and not make any mistakes on. Because like you said, so often a small slip and the entire competition is ruined.
So if the competition has a big slice of luck, it's like rolling a dice. Do you feel like speed climbing is a bit of a gamble as to how hard you go on the wall?
Yeah, so especially when you get into the finals and it becomes 1v1 knockouts, there's so much riding on whether or not you get it just right, and you could be against someone who on paper you're faster than and you would normally run quicker in training, but any little mistake and suddenly there's nothing between you. And yeah, it's a speed final is always quite unpredictable.
And what's happened, from what I can see, with lots of non-speed specialists all of a sudden giving lots of runs and lots of attempts on the speed wall, is new methods have developed as well.
Yeah, so quite famously on the start of the route, there's now a sequence which completely skips out some holds, and it's developed over the years. At one point you went fully off to the left, and then a new sequence was invented by Reza, a famous speed climber, that skipped it out in a small way. And then Tomoa, who's actually not a speed specialist, created a new move that skips it completely with this nuts foot to hand movement. And now everybody does that move, even the speed climbers as well. And it's just revolutionized the way that people are climbing the route.
Yeah, and having tried that move myself, I can tell it's actually not very easy at all. It's really easy to make a slip there. And we do see that quite a lot in the speed comps. A lot of people do fall on the skipping hold number 4, and that's the end of their run.
Yeah, it can be very unforgiving, that move.
So just speaking of different heights then, some people who maybe have not seen climbing before, but especially speed climbers, say it's going to be better to be taller. But maybe that's not the case, with the world records generally being held by some of the smallest athletes.
Yeah, so it's interesting. At certain points, tall climbers have held the records, and at other points it's been much smaller. And I think it's sort of swings and roundabouts to find the most efficient way for you to climb the route. And like I said, if you're really big, you can do these big flowing movements, which to the camera look slower, but because the moves are so big, you're going just as fast as these little guys who are just racing up it with smaller levers and can just like explode between the holds.
What makes speed climbing so fascinating to watch?
I think it's just so inherent what is happening. Like, everybody understands the 100-meter sprint, and for speed climbing it's exactly the same. The objective is obvious, and just watching two people go head to head is always going to be very exciting.
For me, I've always compared speed climbing to running whilst juggling balls, and it seems to be that level of risk.
Yeah, I think that's quite accurate. You've got the pure speed aspect, but with these complexities and curveballs added in that make it quite unpredictable.
Stay tuned for our coverage tomorrow as the women's qualification gets underway.